Hey everyone, this is 8-Bit Flashback, and today I'm going to show you how to install the HomeBrew menu on your Nintendo Switch. And this HomeBrew menu allows you to load and run homebrew apps such as emulators for the Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, Game Boy Advance, and much more. And in order for this to work, you have to have a Nintendo Switch with firmware 3.0.0. So, let's get started. So I recently purchased a second Nintendo Switch just for modding purposes, and I wanted to get one with 3.0.0 firmware so I could do some modding. So the best deal I could find was on eBay, and this seller was selling these for about $360, and I felt that was worth it. He does have a few more of these consoles in hand, so if you want to check him out, you can. I'll make sure to post a link down below, and you want to make sure to message him with what firmware you want. If you want to be able to mod it like I'm doing in this video, then you want 3.0.0 firmware. And I'm not sure how many Switches this seller has in stock with the hackable firmware, so if you want one, keep in mind this is probably a limited supply. And right now, the going rate for the Nintendo Switch with firmware 3.0.0 firmware is right around $300, and that's just for the tablet. No dock, no Joy-Cons, no charger, nothing. Just a tablet. So $360 for this console brand new with everything seems to be a pretty decent price with the hackable firmware. So the first thing you want to do when you're setting up your Nintendo Switch, make sure to skip the Wi-Fi step. Do not log into Wi-Fi because we don't want this thing auto-updating at all. Now I'm going to open up the settings, then scroll down to System at the very bottom. So now I'm in System Settings, and there's a look at my firmware 3.0.0. Now we're going to scroll down to the very bottom and find the auto-update settings. So we want to go ahead and turn these off. That way when we do log into Wi-Fi, it doesn't try to auto-update anything and ruin our firmware. Now it's time to power down the console, so I'm going to hold the power button located on the top left and hold that till a menu pops up and then select turn off. Now I'm going to install a memory card, and this is a 32GB SanDisk micro SD card, and it's not formatted, so it's going to have to be formatted first. Now it's time to power back up the console, and I should get a prompt saying I should format my SD card. So do you want to format it? Yes, I'm going to select format. Then it's going to bring me up another box asking if I want to continue. Yes, I do. Then it's going to ask me one more time. Yes, select format, and it'll format that micro SD card. Now the console should reboot automatically, and after it reboots, I'm going to open up settings, then go down to data management, just to confirm my micro SD card has been formatted. Now I'm going to go ahead and power off the console by holding that button on the top left and power it off. Now it's time to remove the micro SD card from the Nintendo Switch and put that in your PC. Now on your PC, it's time to head over to the HomeBrew Menu download site, and I'll make sure to post a link down below in the description. And you want to click on the newest HomeBrew menu that's available. Right now it's 2.00. Then I'm going to save the file and then open the folder. So located on the left is the HomeBrew Menu zip file that I just downloaded, and then on the right of the screen is the micro SD card for the Nintendo Switch. So I'm going to double click on that HomeBrew Menu zip file, and to open this file you're going to have WinRAR or 7-zip or some sort of zip opening software. So inside that zip file there's going to be a HomeBrew Menu NRO file, so we're going to grab that file and drag it over to the root of the micro SD card for the Nintendo Switch. Now we need to download some Homebrew apps so we can actually do something with the Homebrew menu. And I'll make sure to post a link for this site as well down below in the description. So I'm going to scroll down to Games and download the game Tetris Switch. And this is just a homebrew version of Tetris, nothing special, but it's still very cool that we have homebrew apps for the Nintendo Switch. So I'm going to download this and save this to my computer. Now I'm going to also download an emulator, so I'm going to go to the emulator tab over to the left and click on that. And now I'm going to download PicoDrive, which is a Sega emulator for Sega Genesis and 32X. And there's a lot of other emulators available right now for the Switch, such as Super Nintendo, Game Boy Advance, Atari Jaguar, Neo Geo Pocket, and I'll be testing all these emulators in future videos. Alright, now that we have those downloaded, it's time to make a new folder inside our micro SD card for the Nintendo Switch, and we're going to put this on the root of the SD card, and this folder is going to be named Switch. After I get that folder made, I'm going to double click on one of the apps I just downloaded, so I'm going to double click on the Tetris Switch file. Once that opens up, there's going to be another folder inside there called Switch, so we're going to double click on that, and inside there is going to be an NRO file. So I'm going to grab that file and drag it over to the Switch folder that I just made for the micro SD card for the Switch. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the PicoDrive. I'm going to open that up, and inside the Switch folder is going to be the NRO file I need. So I'm going to grab that and drop it in the Switch folder. Now I have 2 Homebrew apps that are ready to go inside that Switch folder. So the only thing left to do now is add a couple games for the Sega Genesis emulator so I can test them out. So I have a couple games that are already stored on my computer. I'm going to grab Sonic the Hedgehog 3, Street Fighter, and Virtual Racing. And for the Pico drive, I could not get any games to work that were in zip file format, so I had to make sure I unzip the games first. Now on the root of the microSD card for the Switch, I'm going to make another folder, and I'm going to call this Genesis. So now I'm going to drag the 3 games I selected that's on my computer and put those inside this Genesis folder. Now the folder doesn't have to be called Genesis, you can call it whatever you want, you can call it ROMs, or you can name it Sega, or whatever you want, but you probably want to name it something so you can reference what the games are. And here's a quick look at the instructions for the HomeBrew launcher. And the first 2 steps we've already done. We've already downloaded it and put the HomeBrew menu on the root of the SD card. Now we want to put the SD card back in our Nintendo Switch and power it up. Once we're powered back up, we want to navigate over to Settings. Now navigate down to Internet. Then click on Internet Settings. Then get logged into my Wi-Fi. So you're just going to connect to your Wi-Fi like normal. So as soon as you get connected, we're going to back out and go back to your Internet tab and select Internet Settings again. And we're going to pull up our connection we just connected to, so we're going to click on that. Now we're going to go down to Change Settings, then scroll down to DNS Settings and change it from automatic to manual. Now it's time to enter the primary DNS number, and on step 4 of the instructions it tells us what number to use, 104.236.106.125. So I'm going to click on the primary DNS and go ahead and erase all those numbers and enter the numbers from step 4. And you want to make sure you get those periods in between or it will not work. Now we're going to select OK, then save. Now we're going to go up to connect to this network. Now when you go to connect to the network, we should get a message saying registration is required. So we're going to click next at the bottom there. Now we're going to be greeted by this screen where we can install the HomeBrew launcher or run it. So it's time to install it now. So we're going to click on install. And this process might take a few minutes. It just depends on the internet speed. After it's successfully installed, we should get the error code 201337. If you do not get that code, you're going to have to restart the console by holding that power button. Then you want to reconnect to the internet, then try to install the HomeBrew menu again. And you want to keep doing this until you get the correct error code. You may have to do this up to 5 times. For me, it worked the first try. Once you get the correct error message, you want to go ahead and reboot the console by holding that power button. And when you reboot, you might get a message from the Me data saying it's corrupted. Go ahead and select OK. Once your console boots back up to the main menu, select Settings, then go down to Internet, and then Internet Settings again. Now we're going to search for our network and connect to it. And when you try to connect to the internet, you should get that same message saying registration is required. We'll click Next. Now instead of installing, we're going to select Run. And this should take maybe 30 seconds to a minute. Once it's done, we're going to get a message and we'll select OK. And after you select OK, you might have a slight hang up right here on this screen for about 30 seconds. Once the screen loads, you can navigate back to your home screen. Now we're going to go down to the bottom and select Album. Now if everything went correctly, we should have a HomeBrew menu pop up with a couple apps at the bottom. Okay, everything looks good, so I'm going to test out one of my apps. I'll test out Tetris. And this game's okay. The only thing is there's no sound, but it's free, so I shouldn't complain. Then if you want to try another HomeBrew app out, you can just push the home button on the Switch. That'll take you back to the main menu. Then navigate back down to Album, open that. Now I'm going to click on Pico Drive. And that's going to pull up a RetroArch menu, so now I'm going to click down to Load Content. Then down to the /, then select SD, then select my Genesis folder I made earlier where those 3 games are contained. Now I'm going to load Sonic 3. And this emulator for the Genesis seems to be working fairly well and running really close to full speed, but it does have some glitches. What I'm noticing is on fast side-scrolling games like Sonic, when I'm moving side to side, I get this glitch that goes through the screen, and I'm not really sure what's causing that. But for me, the games are still very playable and enjoyable. And on top of that, the emulators keep getting updated, so they keep getting better and better. And I have tested out some other emulators like the Super Nintendo and Game Boy, and those work really well, and I'll be doing some videos on those in the near future. So the homebrew scene has come a long ways in the last 6 months for the Nintendo Switch, and it's going to continue to get much better. We're constantly getting updates for the current emulators, plus new homebrew apps. So for me, this is pretty exciting, being able to add homebrew apps and emulators so I can play games from other systems. It's all very cool. So just a couple things to let you know before I'm out of here. Every time you power off your Switch, when you power it back on, that HomeBrew menu will not be present. So you're going to have to go back to your internet settings, connect to the internet, and click Run on the HomeBrew menu. And then when you go back to your home screen, you'll click on the album, and the HomeBrew menu should pop up like normal. Now this is only if you power the console off. If you just put the console to sleep, then the HomeBrew menu should remain. And if you want to play some of your official Switch games, you want to turn that console off, put your Switch game in, power back up, and the Switch game should work like normal. But you're going to want to be careful with some of the newer Switch games. They may contain updates which might force you to lose your current 3.00 firmware. Alright everyone, thanks for watching. If you liked that video, please click that like button. If you want to hear more from me, please subscribe. And if you want to see more of my videos, just click any of these links. And if you want to help support or sponsor the channel, you can now follow me on Patreon. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.